Charlie Kirk was leaving the firm. Israel has the ability to kill people anywhere. They weren't being told the truth. And that just exploded online to the point where Netanyahu has had to come out twice and deny assassinating Charlie Kirk. But they were moving towards an attack, a political attack on him. It was already playing out through Netanyahu's cutouts in the media.
Max Blumenthal just explained why so many people believe that Israel assassinated Charlie Kirk. And in this clip, he gets into whether he thinks that's a plausible theory, why so many people have clung to it, and the high-level pressure campaign from Charlie's Zionist donors in the last days of his life. Max has done the best journalism in America on this story, so let's get his take. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
It kind of reminds me of the plot of this early 90s pulp book, The Firm, which was made into a film starring Tom Cruise, where like if you join a firm, you basically, if you try to leave, you will be eliminated. Do I think Charlie Kirk was eliminated by Israel? I have no evidence of that. But they were moving towards an attack, a political attack on him. It was already playing out through Netanyahu's cutouts in the media. Ben Shapiro was attacking him. Mark Levin was attacking him. Laura Loomer was attacking him. I mean, this is someone who's making personnel and policy decisions inside the White House. It was already playing out, and he was complaining about it in public. So, and that's more the Israeli MO. And I learned I learned subsequent to the second part of my investigation, that Robert Shillman, who is the key funder of the Islamophobia industry in the US, as well as the most anti-Palestinian organizations across the Atlantic. He's also funding the anti-Islam hooligan Tommy Robinson, who's leading a race war in the UK. He funds Geert Wilders, the Dutch politician who's called to ban the Quran, and he's funded Laura Loomer. And Bob Shillman defunds him. I mean, this was a guy who I'd heard he donated like over $6 million to TPUSA. He canceled, according to sources, a plaque that was going to be erected honoring him inside TPUSA's office complex in Phoenix.
Yeah, it does seem like there was disdain from the most fierce and rigid Zionist donors toward Charlie Kirk in the last days of his life. That seems to be true. We've talked about Laura Loomer having bad things to say about him. Some bad things were said about him from Ben Shapiro. This seemed to me to coincide with the middle of July when some of these statements were made, because Charlie Kirk was on the record, and this was reported, that he went to Donald Trump and pleaded with him not to bomb Iran, not to start a regime change operation with Iran, and implicit with that was the idea that you can't be misled and steered in this direction by the same neocons that got us into disaster foreign policy blunders throughout time. Also, what Max is saying does also align with what Tucker Carlson has said about donations that were pulled from Charlie Kirk, with Tucker here saying that a $2 million donor, just decided not to continue donating. It's unclear to me whether that was Robert Shillman, who Max reported on, rightly so, but let's see what he had to say here.
He was dependent to a great extent on his donors, of course. It's a nonprofit. And they went after him and tormented him. Not all, of course, many were supportive, but the ones who were offended by my speech, and there was a small, very intense group who were, tormented Charlie Kirk until the day he died. 2 days before he died, he lost a $2 million donation because he had publicly pledged to bring me to the next Turning Point conference in December.
Yeah, so you can see, he wasn't exactly inviting the same speakers that guys like Ben Shapiro and Robert Shillman and Bill Ackman wanted to have. And that might have proven, a fatal mistake on his part. If he didn't die this way, I think that there was a method, a strategy being pushed to minimize his political effectiveness in the future. Max has done great reporting on it.
So I also learned that Charlie Kirk was being managed on a daily level by a right-wing, Israeli-funded, government-funded rabbi in Israel from the US named Pesach Wolicki. And there were these small Zoom sessions that Charlie Kirk had to call into with Bill Ackman, a venture capitalist fanatically anti-Palestinian venture capitalist from Sequoia Capital named Sean McGuire, and Joshua Hammer, who's one of Netanyahu's key voices in the media and is editor at large at Newsweek. He's the guy who debated Dave Smith at TPUSA for Israel. And they were explicitly feeding him talking points and telling him what to say because they were afraid of what was going to take place on his upcoming campus tour, which began September 10th at Utah Valley University. And Pesach Wolicki, his self-appointed Zionist manager, said that Charlie Kirk was pushing back on a lot of the things they were telling him to say, that he had fallen under the influence of the media and of people close to him who were pushing him in another direction, which probably refers to people like Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, one account even has Charlie Kirk at this summit in the Hamptons holding up his phone and drafting out a text that said, Benjamin Netanyahu should resign, and asking the group in frustration, like, what would be immoral about sending this text right now? Given the animosity toward Netanyahu, rightfully so in my mind, for the genocide, for undue influence over the U.S. political system, dragging the U.S. into a war with Iran, and by the way, doing that with Libya and Syria too, and at least Iraq partially so. Lots of complicit neocons in the U.S. too. But, Max detailed this in his awesome article where he talks about Netanyahu's functionaries managing Kirk on an almost daily basis, making him go to these Zoom calls. You can't really force him, right? But these are high-value donors. Shillman and Ackman certainly were. And they were trying to drag him back to the die-hard, dyed-in-the-wool, zealous neocon of the kind that Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin are. He was putting up some resistance to that, despite defending Israel. He did say a lot of things about, the fact that in his mind, there was no genocide in Israel. There was no deliberate starvation. That kind of contravenes a lot of what we know about it. And then he would go on rants about how, it's not anti-Semitism just to criticize the government of Israel. So he was in a rock and a hard place, dealing with young conservative activists, a lot of which are going away and drifting away from the Israel first mentality, and trying to manage at the same time these wealthy Zionist donors that want him defending Israel at all costs, no matter what the issue is, and no matter how much bloodshed there is.
And they were deeply concerned, and they were trying to make a WhatsApp group with him so he would be fed talking points minute by minute. I mean, that's not something you do to someone who you feel comfortable with as an Israel advocate. And they're not able to get access to him just through the personal bonhomie. It wasn't clear that Charlie Kirk particularly liked them. They were just kicking down a lot of money to his organization and holding money over his head. So he's killed on September 10th at this event under very strange circumstances. Anyone who's extremely online is not believing the official story. And it's increasingly unclear what the official story is when the FBI director himself says they're exploring different angles that the sniper might have taken, as well as multiple accomplices. And a theory develops online. I was not responsible for it. In my first installment of this investigative series, I said explicitly, there is no evidence the Israeli government played a role in Charlie Kirk's killing. I called it an unsubstantiated theory, but others just ran with it. And it sort of seemed to make sense for them, considering that Netanyahu is at the helm of a historically unparalleled global assassination apparatus that even weaponizes household communication goods to kill people, referring to pagers. So for them, it sort of seemed to add up.
Yeah, and guess what? I can't really hold that against them based on Israel's track record to think about this possibility, even if you don't embrace it. And I'm like Max, I have no evidence that Israel did this. But take a look at this. This is just what Wikipedia has in terms of a list of Israeli assassinations. It's more than any other country, even the U.S. If you compare this to, say, the U.S., there's only several dozen. That's not to say that the U.S. didn't assassinate many more people, but this is just what's documented online. You have this broken down by decade of Israeli assassinations. And I can't even scroll fast enough to capture this in one video clip. There's thousands of targeted assassinations that Israel is documented to have done. If I drag all the way the cursor down, it ends in the recent assassinations in Doha. So, Max was right when he said that this is a historically unprecedented mass murder apparatus. And that's just the truth. So, it's not, it behooves people to look into these things. And I can't exactly blame them for at least entertaining the thought for a moment, even if you don't full bore embrace it.
Charlie Kirk was leaving the firm. Israel has the ability to kill people anywhere. They weren't being told the truth. And that just exploded online to the point where Netanyahu has had to come out twice and deny assassinating Charlie Kirk. Once out of his own volition, like he wasn't even asked during an interview, he decided to make a video on his personal channel denying Charlie Kirk. I've never seen this happen, where a foreign leader is denying killing an American public figure. And it could only be Netanyahu, because no other foreign leader enjoys that level of influence over not just American politics, but over American life itself, over American entertainment, over American finance.
That's exactly right. And by the way, the theory that a lot of Zionists are going with is, if you think this is weird, that Netanyahu's denying killing Charlie Kirk twice, that just means you're an anti-Semite. That's what I hear. And it's so preposterous, just like any criticism of Israel means you're an anti-Semite, according to devout Zionists like Netanyahu.
Netanyahu is the embodiment of Zionist-occupied territory. So he came out and felt compelled to deny it. My theory is, for once, Netanyahu was innocent, and he just wanted everyone to know. But who knows? The takeaway is that my investigative reporting on this has given the conservative grassroots that has been sick of being bossed around by the cutouts of a foreign country, one that happens to be an occupying genocidal entity, it's given them a voice, and they're more emboldened to speak out now. And this rebellion in the conservative grassroots is only going to grow. And why is this such a problem for Netanyahu, and why are they throwing so much money at this particular constituency and demographic in the US? There are two reasons. One, obviously, because Trump is president. And so in order to influence the president, they need to keep his base on side. The other reason, which is more of a long-term problem, is that Israel needs white, Christian, conservative men who increasingly make up a disproportionate portion of the enlisted military ranks, as well as military leadership, needs them to fight their wars. They have to go to war for Israel. They have to go fight Iran. And if the next round of conflict with Iran doesn't go so well, Netanyahu wants a ground war with US boots on the ground.
Yeah, he surely does. He's wanted that regime change operation since I was a wee young lad, talking about the propaganda that, they're seconds away from acquiring a nuke. He's done that for something like 30 years. And that's exactly the case. I think Max is getting at something real here. But I would add to this, I think there's such a desperation from the Israel First lobby and the Israel lobby in general, because they see their opportunity window closing. In 10 years, the demographics are not shifting in their favor in terms of younger people and their sensibilities regarding this issue, how they view Israel compared to their parents and their parents' parents, who are more supportive of Israel, generally speaking. There are exceptions, of course. Many people listen to this channel and are exceptions. I give you credit. But younger people are not buying this whole Israel First mentality wholesale anymore. They think they might have like a 10-year window to kind of consummate the Greater Israel Project, expanding Israel's borders, completely eliminating the Palestinians through this ethnic cleansing campaign, disrupting and destabilizing the Iranian regime, who they think is like their top rival. And, they tried to get the U.S. into a regime change operation over where that seemed to be on the table. Israel called leading generals and tried to threaten them to, abandon ship, or else their families would be killed. They immediately bombed non-nuclear sites. They bombed residential sites holding, high-ranking officials of that regime. So this is on the table, and it's not going to go away.
The only way he believes regime change can take place in Iran, and that is his endgame. That is the ultimate endgame of Netanyahu and everyone who will come in his wake. So this is such a significant, pivotal moment. I guess you could call it a turning point in the USA, where not only the traditional bases of opposition to Israeli apartheid and Israeli control are more mobilized than ever, but a rebellion is taking place within the traditional base of pro-Israel support. And it's only growing and accelerating.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And that's the case in the last bastion of pure blood Israel support. Pure blood may be not the correct term there, but devout support, fervent support, ardent support for Israel. It's being diminished on the right. I know it doesn't seem like that politically. Trump's in power. He's a diehard Israel firster. But the on-the-ground activists and populist forces are seeing this for what it is, and that's foreign influence over our government. And when you're going to use the tagline and slogan, America First, that looks even worse for you when you just defer all political capital to this country that you're supporting financially to the tune of $20 billion last year. In previous years, it was $4 billion each. And you're basically being drawn into wars and entangling alliances and inheriting all of the enemies of Israel for what? For no reason whatsoever for the United States. The taxpayer doesn't benefit from that one bit. Quite to the contrary, it ends up with debt and encourages inflation. The central bank just printing new currency and imposing the invisible tax upon all of us, upon all of our wealth holdings. But if you follow the conservative movement closely enough, especially at the grassroots level, you can see that a small-scale civil war is playing out over this issue. And it does seem like this is a story, whether or not you think Israel had a hand in Kirk's murder, that is worth talking about. It's emblematic about the pressures that are being put upon these high-profile influencers on the right. Young person that was very sharp, like Charlie Kirk, but very influenced by his donors, and weighing the pressures that he had both from activists and donors, and trying to produce and encourage and expand his organization was no easy feat. And you can see how if the pressures on Charlie were this hardcore in the last few weeks of his life, which I believe they were, I think that Max's journalism is superb. You can see how the pressures on our elected politicians are that much more fierce. And the influences on the bureaucracy and the president, where the president was bought off by Miriam Adelson for $100 million. And she got to basically call the shots about who was going to be in his cabinet. Marco Rubio and Mike Huckabee and Mike Waltz, what do you know? Israel firsters to the core. In fact, that was the biggest litmus test for anyone in Trump's cabinet. How pro-Israel were they? RFK and Tulsi Gabbard were very pro-Israel too. So that's what you get from this Zionist-occupied government, where AIPAC and the Israel lobby has such unprecedented control and influence over our government. And you saw that pan out when it comes to the Charlie Kirk story. But I do want to hear from you. Let me know down below. Do you agree with Max Blumenthal that, though there's no evidence that Israel had a hand in his killing, this is at least a story worth discussing, and it really shows the corruption involved in the U.S. political system? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Boston Community Church. Thank you for hosting this interview. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support my channel. And as thanks for that, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.